Don't you love it when there's a thing that's free, but it's free as in beer and not as in speech, and you want to use it off-label, and then you find that it's been, well, it's not even, VMware. VMware is a cool product, no matter how you slice the cheese, but it's commercial and it's proprietary. They are far and away, in terms of how advanced their technology is, the most advanced hypervisor virtualization thing that there is. And I know that sounds crazy. That sounds completely nuts. I know what you're thinking. This video was sponsored by VMware. No, guess again. It was actually sponsored by Synology. Funny story. I was going to do this video and I reached out to Synology and they were like, hey, we would actually sponsor this because I discovered a cool feature of their Synology NAS. So thanks, Synology. It's Synology's Active Backup. And the Active Backup pairs really well with VMware. They go together like peas and carrots, as it turns out. But let's dive in. So for the first part of this video, I actually want to walk you through installing the free version of VMware Esxi. If you're going to judge it, you at least ought to play with it. Unless you want to, like, you know, just judge it on the license alone, and then it's like, oh, it's not GPL and fully open source, I cannot run it. It's fine. The commercial space is not quite as black and white as that. And VMware actually legit is a good product, and VMware, I think, is legit ahead of Proxmox and Hyper-V, Linux kernel, the KVM, in a lot of ways that are important in the commercial space. But the free version of VMware Esxi is limited in a lot of ways. One, any virtual machines that you run under Esxi, the free version, are limited to 8 virtual CPUs. So if you've got a monster 32-core Threadripper system, foreshadowing, your virtual machines are going to be individually limited to 8 cores. It seems arbitrary. Older versions limited memory, but they took those limitations out, which is pretty good. But even beyond the vCPU limitation, there are a lot of other limitations, mostly around the API and internal functionality and features of VMware. Cutting edge things like vSAN, which we'll talk a little bit about, and the interface for the API. Even the API that does like block changes is disabled. So a lot of commercial third-party software for backing up VMware, backing up individual VMs, expects the API to be available, and when it's not on the free version, those products just don't work. So it's an odd situation. Or you have a commercial backup product that the pay-for version works, but not with the free version of VMware. And you could use the free version of the backup software with the pay-for VMware, or the pay-for version of the backup software with the free VMware, but not the free version of VMware with the free version of the backup software. It's really annoying. It's really, really annoying. Also, like, per core licensing and per VM licensing for your backup software, that's just dumb. I think the reason people like me are annoyed by this is because, like, under the hood, there's still a Linux kernel in VMware. You can SSH into it. You can manipulate files on the file system. You can just do SCP and rsync and that kind of thing. So the first thing I'm going to do is walk you through installing VMware, the free version, Esxi, set it up so you can play with this for yourself. And then I'm going to show you how to use the Active Backup software and do a restore with VMware, because it's actually got some pretty cool features. So if you want to skip to the Active Backup part, the timestamp for that is here. And maybe it was on screen already, because I get a little bit long-winded, a little bit rambly. This might be the third time I've done this video to try to not be so rambly, because there's a lot of little tangents and interesting information from this sort of this mission of setting up VMware. So let's set up VMware in the lab first. So I've got my Fedora workstation behind me, and in order to get VMware, we really just have to go to the VMware webpage and sign up and register. When you do that, you'll be able to download all these trials, and all these cool features will work for a little while and then they won't. Let's just bypass all of that. There's one lone page that is download the free version of VMware Esxi. That's what we want. That's what we're interested in. When you go there, it'll automatically sort of create a product key for you, and you can use that product key. Now, if you've used VMware in the past, like 6.3 or 6.5 or an older version, they changed the key format. So the keys are completely different now. You'll have to sign up for 6.7, or maybe by the time you're watching this video, 7.0, because 7.0 is right around the corner. Once you've downloaded that, you've got an ISO. Now, I used Etcher on Fedora, but I mean, you could use DD or anything really to create a bootable USB stick. So I'm using a Micro Center 4 gig USB. It's just temporary throwaway. This is going to create an installer that will let you install VMware. And our installation is complete. VMware, like the operating system and the bootable part, lives on a USB stick typically, or a micro SD card that would actually normally be inside the computer, like inside a server. So the installer is installing from this USB to that USB. And that's basically it. The machine that we're installing this on, the one over there, is the Aorus Master with the 32-core 2990WX monster Threadripper machine. Threadripper makes a particularly good home lab machine because it's low power when it's idle, doesn't really generate a lot of heat, and it's monster performance. Most people probably don't need that. Most people would be happy with probably a 1700 or less for their home server, but you know, there you go. It's like, I want to run all the Plex streams. It's like, well, 5700 and Threadripper was basically the most amazing thing ever. So just need backups and bulk storage, and that's what the Synology is going to give us. But we got to prep our VM host first. So once you've got VMware set up on this machine, or once you've got VMware basically set up and good to go, you're going to get an IP address on the network, you can go into the web UI and configure it. Now, because VMware actually runs from the USB stick, you need somewhere to put your virtual machines. That can be SATA, it can be NVMe, it can be anything. I've got this fancy pants M.2 adapter that'll hold up to 4 M.2s. I've got a single 1 terabyte in here now. I could, load this thing down with 8 terabytes of NVMe if I wanted, and that will be made available as a data store in VMware. So you go to the data stores and you configure the data store, set that up, and you're basically good to go. At that point, you can now enter your serial number. Well, I mean, you could have entered your serial number before, but the reason I wait is because it's like, oh, if you've got a hardware problem, you got to reinstall. Like, why did you bother setting up the serial number? So go ahead and set up the serial number in VMware Esxi. It is important to add your serial number before you configure your Synology for backups, because without the serial number, all the functions are enabled. And then you put the serial number in, and then VMware disables all of the functions because it's the free version. And so the Synology can get confused about which version of Esxi you had, and you might have to reset it up. So pay attention there. So once you've got your virtual machine once you have got all this configured, you can add your first virtual machine. We're going to set up Debian. So I downloaded a Debian ISO. You're going to have to upload that to the data store. It's not really a big deal. File browser. You can do all this through the web browser. You just go to the IP address and log in with the password that you set when you were setting up VMware Esxi. There's a full guide on the level 1 forum. If you get lost, come to the forum and I'll try to help you. But basically, you got Debian. It's booting up. It's good to go. The virtual machine is basically ready. All right, now we can set up our Synology. So we've got it plugged into the network here. Now, it's like, how do you know the IP address? How can you find the Synology? Well, by default, the Synologies are called disk station. Most of the time, you can just type disk station into the web browser and it'll take you there. But if not, you can go to find.synology.com, and that will try to find and scan the Synology on your local network. Are you paranoid about adware now and like browsers that can scan your network for things? Because you should be. Because how did this web browser scan my entire network and I didn't get any security pop-ups or warnings or anything? That seems weird. I don't know. No, it's fine. The way the Synology implements this is not actually insanely dangerous. It does require phoning home, but it's not insanely dangerous. So I'll give them a pass on that. So once you've done that, you can go to the web browser address of the Synology and log in with the default password, which is in the documentation for Synology, or I've set a secure password here. And then we can just go to the apps section and actually install the Active Backup for Business. Now, remember, this is really cool. This Synology, the DS1618 Plus, doesn't require any extra licenses or per VM fees or anything like that. You can back up as many VMs as you want. There's actually stuff for backing up G Suite and Office 365 and all these cloud services. And this Synology can also replicate to other Synologies off-site. So if you've got, say like you're the IT director for a business and you're worried about it like burning down, but they've only got $3 to spend. Well, you can set up another Synology at your house as the IT director over an encrypted VPN, hopefully with encrypted storage, and use the off-site Synology as a replica of the Synology that's on-site. And you can actually restore just using the Active Backup GUI. Like, that's one of the things, the hot standby failover thing. I'm not going to show you how to do that in this video, it's too involved, but know that it is possible and you can do it. And if you actually pick up one of these for that function and can't figure it out, come to the forum, maybe I'll make a video after all, because it is a really cool feature that it does this, because it does differential backup. So like if you got a 100 gig virtual machine and only 2 gigs changes a day, it's only going to move 2 gigs off site every day, just the 2 gigs that changed, which is really cool. Now we're going to set up VMware. When we set up VMware here, the Synology is going to complain. It's going to say, hey, this is the free version of Esxi, you pleb. You need to enable SSH. SSH is disabled by default. Secure Shell, it's a part of Linux, it's a part of pretty much every Unix operating system. It's like a remote command interface to the system. It's insanely dangerous because it's insanely powerful. It's a command prompt interface that will let you do anything, literally anything on the remote machine. So in VMware, you're gonna have to go to the configuration and services here on screen. Look, this is where you go. And you're gonna have to enable not only SSH, but also the Esxi command shell. So this enables SSH as well as the ability to access Esxi. And you need to set these services to start automatically when VMware restarts. Otherwise, when we reboot the computer, SSH will mysteriously not work and your backups will not work. This SSH feature, turning it on, is really only required on the free version of Esxi, because again, remember that API interface is enabled on any of the pay-for versions of VMware. Actually, if you check the link in the description, there are specific versions, like feature levels, I guess I should more accurately call it, of VMware that the Synology directly supports. And so you'll want to make sure that you actually use one of those. Now, with this setup, I can see my VMs in the Synology. The Synology has full access to all of the VMs that I'm running in VMware because I've given it the root password and it can SSH in my configuration. So it is able to pull all of the files and everything off of the Synology to actually back up the full VM. It can also check the VM configuration in VMware to be sure that the VM is actually there. And if it's not there, it'll say, whoa, the VM is not there. We can do a restore. It'll let you do a restore even if the VMware virtual machine is there, just from an earlier point in time. One of the really cool things in this setup GUI is backup retention. I mean, it might seem like a little thing, but a lot of backup software really gets this backup retention thing wrong. And the backup retention thing is really cool. So let's say that I'm paranoid and I've got a lot of terrible users on my network and they might delete something and they might not notice for a while. Well, if you've dotted your I's and crossed your T's, or the client has been willing to spend the money to set it up properly, you can have a backup retention rotation like what the GUI suggests here on the Synology. So I can have 7 daily backups that'll give me a week's worth of snapshots, but say somebody deleted something and then went on vacation for 2 weeks. Well, we can also have monthly and weekly rotation. And so what that means is that I'm going to keep daily backups for 7 days, but I'm also going to keep 1 day's backup from the previous 4 weeks. And I'll also keep 1 day's backup from every month for the last 6 months. So if today is August 25th, then I've got all of the backups all the way back to August 20th, and then I've got August 1st, and then I've got July 1st, and then I've got June 1st, and then, you know, like May 1st and April 1st, and so on and so forth. And so in that rotation, I'm not maintaining 6 months worth of backups. I'm really only maintaining about, 12 backups in all, like 10 to 12 or whatever, depending on what day of the month it is and some other stuff that's going on. But I'm not maintaining, a backup for literally every day all the way back to April. I've just got some historical snapshots. So once we've created our backup job, we can actually just let it run. This Debian virtual machine doesn't have a lot of information. It looks like it's backing up. Backup is complete, really didn't take very long. Now something goes wrong and we need to restore this virtual machine. There are 3 restore options. One is I can do a full restore. That does exactly what you think it does. It's going to copy the last backup that's on the Synology over the wire, over the network, to the Esxi machine. If your network is 10 gigabit and you've upgraded your Synology to 10 gig, or you're using a particular Synology that has a 10 gig interface, that's going to move at about 1 gigabyte per second, or up to the limit of the storage medium that you're using in your Synology. My particular Synology with a 10 gig upgrade can move at about 400 megabytes per second, which is not too shabby for 6 disks of spinning Rust. That's pretty good, really. The other 2 restore options are to restore a lightweight virtual machine. And so what this does is it's like the fast restore option. And so what this does, this buys you time, really, because eventually you're gonna have to do a full restore. Let's say that you come in and your single physical server solution is down, and it's 8 o'clock and people are starting to roll in, and it's like you gotta get it back up so people can do their work, and you know, OMG, WTF, BBQ. And so there's basically nothing wrong with the server itself. It's just the VM is gone. Maybe like Windows Update clobbered the server completely, which happens once in a while. So with this fast restore option, what it does is it creates a lightweight virtual machine on VMware that will boot and connect to the network, to the Synology over the network. So like if you've got, you know, a 5 terabyte C drive on your virtual machine, the virtual machine that's created in VMware has access to that 5 terabytes over the wire to the Synology. So the hard drive speed is going to be limited to whatever your network speed is and whatever your NAS speed is, but you get that VM back up and running immediately. So the reduced IOPS performance will hurt the overall speed of the VM, but you can at least be back up and running, and you know, depending on what your use case is, that may be enough for your office to limp through the workday. And then at the end of the workday, you can shut it down, do the full restore in a matter of hours, and then be back up to full IOPS performance, no problem. And then the other option is you can actually restore the VM and run it on the Synology. So inside the Synology is a 4-core, 4-thread Atom machine. The DS1618 Plus, which is the Synology that I have, it has 4 gigabytes of RAM by default. I've upgraded that to 8 gigabytes of RAM. If you have a small VM that you need to run, you can actually restore that directly on the NAS, and that works great. I mean, that's obviously not going to run the Active Directory controller and logon services for even a medium-sized business. But if you have like an absolutely critical VM that you just need to get up and running to copy some files off of for like 1 or 2 people, and there's enough RAM there to do that, you totally could do that with that option. If you have a higher end Synology, one that's got a lot more compute horsepower, like some of their enterprise stuff that they advertise on their website, then you're gonna have a little bit more ability to boot up a little bit beefier VMs, but it is what it is. Now, in addition to Debian, of course, it works great with Windows VMs, or really any other kind of VM that you would want to run. It's also pretty awesome that I think this is the only product I've seen that enables the block level differential functionality on the free version of VMware. What that means is that my little Debian VM, if I come in and I copy 500 gigabytes to it, when it does the backup again, it's not going to back up the full VM, it's just going to back up what I changed. Now, that's a built-in feature of the pay-for version of VMware. Other backup solutions will do that on the pay-for VMware, no problem. But to my knowledge, this is the only product that I've seen that actually works correctly as far as the differential backup. I have no idea how they enabled that, and I'm sure that's an oversight on VMware's part, or I don't know. I mean, I would guess that that's an oversight on VMware's part, but this is really cool. This is really slick functionality that this product is able to do this, and that's the main reason why I wanted to share this with you, is because there have been a lot of changes around VMware and licensing, and especially on third-party products. A lot of third-party products assume that because you have VMware, that you have just buckets and buckets of money to just throw away on stuff, but it turns out that that's not the case for a lot of people. So the fact that you can back up pretty much any VM, it's agentless. It means that you don't have to have software on an individual VM. The fact that the license goes with the box, the Synology box, like you have the license to run active backup when you buy Synology, and it doesn't care about the number of VMs or ESXi hosts or any of that BS. It's basically good to go out of the box. And the fact that the restore system is pretty sane is also really cool. Now, there's one other feature of Active Backup for Business, and that's the Active Backup for Business portal. So if you go to restore a VM, you don't really have to restore the full VM to get at the contents, at least in the case of Linux or Windows. You just click the link here at the bottom, and you actually get this cool nifty timeline that shows you sort of a timeline of the different backups that are available on the Synology, depending on whatever your backup schedule was. So in the case of our Debian VM, I can browse to the home folder, and I can browse to W, and I can pull down my .profile file, which is you know, an important file that people often maintain for decades and decades of use. It's like, oh, I've messed it up, I need to download it. I can see how many bytes it is. I can download it right here, or I can just restore it in place. This works the same for Linux or Windows virtual machines. If you've got something more exotic, well, I mean, it's not going to be able to mount and browse what has been backed up, but this is a pretty nifty feature. All right, I'm Wendell. This is level 1. If you have any questions about the DS1618 Plus, I've got a couple other videos in the queue, so if there's something I didn't cover or there's something that you want to see, let me know. But right now, I've got 2 Epic servers with 2 Tesla V100s doing mad machine learning and some VMware, like some 4 gamers, 1 PC thing. And I need to really, it's hard for me to convey in a video how cool that is, unless you already know. And then it's like, hey, check out this thing that I'm doing. And people that already know are like, wow, that's really amazing. And people that are not in the know are kind of like, eh. So you can download VMware and try it. Works really well on AM4 these days. I'm Wendell, this is level 1. I'll catch you later.